All right, guys, we are back. Now, today, we're going to learn the in-cab inspection. I know you guys been asking for a long time for this video. I finally got around to doing it. So make sure you guys like, comment, and share. And we're gonna start now. So always remember, when you're doing the in-cab inspection, you always wanna start with a safe start. I'm going to do my safe start. First thing, my seatbelt, no cuts, no frays, properly mounted. The mounting bolt not rusted, cracked, or missing. No cuts, no frays on the belt. Properly adjust and properly latches. My seat is in proper position and I can reach both my pedals. I'm going to make sure my vehicle's in neutral and my parking brakes are applied. And then I'll put it to the on position, which is one click to the right. I want to look at my gauges and warning lights. All my gauges go from left to right. All my warning lights, including my ABS light, turns on and off. And now it is safe to start the vehicle. So now, once you start the vehicle, you always want to make sure you hear the governor cutoff. If you have an air pocket, which you can tell on the gauge, if the gauge is stuck between 100 and 120 and it's not building, that means you have an air pocket. If it builds up and you hear the governor cutoff, then you want to say that you heard the governor cutoff, which I just heard the governor cutoff. It's working, which means I have a fully charged air tank. If I do have an air pocket, what I want to do is I want to pump the brakes, and I want to pump it down to about 90 psi, so then the governor can get the switch to know that it needs more air to rebuild up the pressure. So just pump it down about 5 to 6 times, whatever you need, until it gets to around 90 psi. Once it gets to around 90 psi, you'll hear like a refrigerator sound, which it's just building up air pressure on your air compressor, and then your governor will cut off when it gets to around 120 psi. So since we have 120 psi, we have enough pressure right now to conduct our air brake test. Always remember, you want to do the air brake test first. You want to get the air brake test out the way, and then you can do your in-cab wraparound. So, examiner, I'm going to start my air brake test. I'm going to cut my engine off, and I want to put it back to the on position. Warning lights turn on and off. Gauges straddle from left to right. My first test will be my static test. I'm going to check for any air leaks. I'm going to cover my brake. I'm not really pressing down on the brake. I'm just covering it to make sure it doesn't roll anywhere. And I'm going to release my tractor and trailer parking brakes. Now I have an initial loss. My initial loss went down to about around 100 psi. We lost about 20 pounds of air pressure. And now we should not lose no more than 4 psi within 1 minute. So examiner, I should not lose more than 4 psi within 1 minute. If I do lose more than 4 psi, that means I have an air leak somewhere. And if the air gauge is building up, that means I messed up and I left the engine on, and I would want to restart my whole entire air brake test. So I'm starting my 1 minute countdown. Within this 1 minute, I'll keep looking at the gauges, make sure it's not dropping, and make sure it's not building. And make sure you always wait the 1 full minute. And as you see, the gauges are not dropping, they're not building, they're just steady. Examiner, 1 minute has passed. I did not lose any air pressure. I did not lose more than 4 psi within this minute. And my gauges are holding around 100 psi. Now I will do my low pressure warning test. My low pressure warning test, I'll pump the brakes to around 60 psi. You want to make sure you say that. And my warning lights should turn on, and the alarm should turn on as well. So right about there, 60 psi exactly. My warning lights turned on, and my alarm has sounded. My low pressure warning test is working. Next, I will do my spring brake test. Between 20 and 40 psi, my parking brakes will pop out, and my warning lights will stay on, and my alarm will stay on. Make sure you say it before you actually do it. And as you're doing it, you just want to look at your parking brakes. You want to look at your gauges. Right there, it popped out around 30 psi. So examiner, around 30 psi, both my tractor and trailer brakes have popped out, which means my spring brakes have activated. My warning lights are still on, and my alarm is still on. My spring brake test is working. Now I will do my air buildup test and my in-cab wraparound. So for the air buildup test, you want to make sure that the air gauges rise up back to fully charged, which is about 120 psi. Once it does cut off, I want to make sure I announce that the governor cutoff is working, my air buildup test is working, which also means my air compressor is working. Now we're going to do our air buildup test. Parking brake is applied, vehicle is on neutral, safe to start, vehicle is started. And now I just want to wait a second and make sure my air buildup test is starting to work before I do my in-cab wraparound. Alright, examiner, my air gauge number 1, air gauge number 2, both are slowly rising, and while it builds, I'll do my in-cab wraparound. So with the in-cab wraparound, I always want to start with my steering wheel. My steering wheel, on a 20-inch wheel, I should not have no more than 10 degrees of play. You do not want to say inches. You want to say, on a 20-inch wheel, I do not have no more than 10 degrees of play. My city horn is working. My left indicator is working. My right indicator is working. My four-way flasher indicators are working. My high beam indicator is working. My air horn is working. My windshield wipers and washers are both working, and it doesn't leave any streaks. My windshield is clean and not cracked. There is no illegal stickers, and I see my registration and inspection both are up to date, and it's visible, and there's no damages. Next, I want to go straight down to my gauges. First, I have my engine oil temperature gauge. My engine oil temperature gauge is between 100 and 150 Fahrenheit, which is proper level, and there's no warning lights. Next, I have my water temperature gauge, which is around 140 degrees Fahrenheit. It is slowly rising, and there is no warning lights. Next, I have my oil PSI gauge. My oil PSI gauge is between 40 and 60 PSI, which is considered proper level, and there is no warning lights. My RPM gauge is idling at 700 RPM. There is no warning lights, and it's at the proper level. My miles per hour gauge is at the proper level, 0, because we're not moving, and there is no warning lights. My voltmeter gauge is above 14 volts, which is proper charge, and there is no warning lights. My fuel gauge, we have about a quarter tank, which is proper level, and there is no warning light. My primary and secondary air gauge, it's still slowly rising. Oh, right there, fully charged. I just heard the governor cut off, my air buildup test is working, which also means that my air compressor is working. Both my gauges are around 120 psi, which is proper level, and there is no warning lights. Next, I want to move over to my defroster. My defroster is working, top and bottom. My top driver vent is working. My bottom driver vent is also working. Now, I just want to keep going down. My 2 parking brakes, tractor and trailer, is not bent, broken, or cracked. There is no audible leaks, and it is properly mounted. And over here, we have our air filter gauge, which we said in the front we would check it on the inside. Our air filter gauge is not bent, broken, or cracked, and it is at proper level. When it goes up to the red level, that means it's time to change the air filter. Next, we have our gearbox. Our gearbox is not bent, broken, or cracked. It is properly mounted and secure. And all the mounting bolts are not rusted, cracked, or missing. And it is in neutral. Our floor is clean. It's not cracked. There's no holes. There's nothing behind my pedal. No obstructions behind my pedal. My pedals have 100% rubber around it. My seat is properly mounted to the bracket, and the bracket is properly mounted to the floor. Every time the idle cutoff cuts off your engine, you just turn it right back on. Back to my chair. Chair is properly mounted to the bracket. Bracket is properly mounted to the floor. No abrasions or cuts on the chair. No cracks, no damage. No bends on the frame of the chair. And the bolts are not rusted, cracked, or missing. Next, I have my fire extinguisher, which is properly rated at 10 BC. And it is fully charged and up to date. I have a 9-piece first aid kit. Inside this kit, I also have 3 spare bulbs and 3 spare fuses for the tractor, and another 3 spare bulbs and 3 spare fuses for the trailer. Next, I would like to make sure all my mirrors are properly adjusted from the inside to my view. Both my mirrors and my 2 hood mirrors are properly adjusted to my view from the inside. My windows go up and down properly. My door opens and closes properly. And my rubber seal is intact. No abrasion, no bulges, no cuts. Now, we are not finished with our inspection. Our last thing is our 4-point brake test. Our 4-point brake test in the automatic and also in the manual vehicle is the same. You have to make sure you test each brake separately. So, if I wanted to test my tractor brake, I would have to release my trailer brake in order to make sure this one is holding. Vice versa, if I want to test my trailer brakes, I would have to release my tractor parking brakes and try to push forward and make sure that they were holding. After that, I would test my trailer handbrake, also known as the Charlie brake. And finally, I'll test my service brake by moving up 15 feet at 5 miles an hour. Once I press the brake and stop, I will want to make sure my steering does not push or pull, and our brake pedal does not push or pull. So now, examiner, we will start our 4-point brake test. First, I will check my tractor parking brake by releasing my trailer brakes and putting it to a low gear. Then I want to make sure side to side and up ahead is clear to go. Alright, examiner, it's clear to go. No obstructions. I want to make sure I do this method at least twice So you just simply press the gas just so you can hear the rev. You want to do it twice. All right. My tractor parking brake is holding. Now I will test my trailer parking brake. I would engage my trailer brakes, and I want to release my tractor brakes. Make sure it's in a low gear. All right, it's clear to go on both sides. And make sure we got to do this at least twice. Just want to hear the truck rev a little bit. With the stick shift vehicle, make sure you put it to a low gear and then release the clutch pedal a little bit until you feel the traction point. Once you feel the traction point and you hear the engine rev a little bit, then do it one more time. Make sure every time you do it, every parking brake, you got to do it twice, and then make sure it's holding. So now my trailer parking brake is holding. Now I want to release both my parking brakes to test my hand brake, also known as my Charlie brake. Make sure it's on the low gear. All right, there we go. One more time. All right, my trailer handbrake is holding properly. Now I want to release that, and finally I'm going to do my service brake. My service brake, I'm going to pull forward 15 feet at 5 miles an hour, and then press my service brake to make sure it's holding and the vehicle stops. All right, for both my right and left is clear. Put it to a low gear. Okay, my service brake is holding properly. I'm going to put it back to neutral and apply both my brakes to rebuild up both my air pressures. I want to make sure before I leave, I always have around 120 psi, or at least more than 100 for the road test. But me, I like to always wait till it's 120 psi because it's only like 2 more seconds, and I always like to hear the governor cut off. My steering did not push left or right, which means I don't have any steering, low tire pressure issue, and no issues with the load, uneven. And my brake pedal did not push or pull, which means it's properly working and it's not gonna get stuck, and which also indicates that my brake drums and brake lining are both grasping the wheel properly. Now that I heard the governor cut off again, now I'm ready to go, and my governor has cut off. I have around 120 psi. Now we're ready to leave, and we are finished with our in-cab inspection and our air brake test. So it is that easy, everybody. Always make sure anything you do, name, condition, where, and how, always make sure get the air brake test out the way first. Do your safe start, build up your air pressure. Once you build up your air pressure, first thing, cut it off and then to the on position to do your air brake test. After you do your air brake test, then do the air build-up test. As the air is building up, do your in-cab wraparound. After you do your in-cab wraparound, make sure the test is not finished because you did not complete the 4-point brake test yet. After you complete your 4-point brake test, then your in-cab inspection and your air brake test is complete. Make sure you like, make sure you share, make sure you comment. And thanks again for watching.